Coming up, 5 consecutive droughts have crippled Somaliland. It's had a devastating effect on children. The UN steps in to ensure kids stay in school.
Actually, school feeding programs is one of the key strategies and interventions that we use to promote access to equitable, quality education for all.
Climate activists descend upon a dirty energy conference as CEOs of some of the planet's most powerful companies meet in London.
We've got chief executives of the fossil fuel industry meeting with banks and politicians to discuss how to further establish and entrench fossil fuels.
But first, the battle in Gaza has put the region under extreme water stress. We look at a situation millions of people are confronted with and whether anything can be done. This is Just 2 Degrees on TRT World. Well, while Hamas and Israeli forces are locked in a bloody conflict, a war in which Palestinian civilians make up the majority of the death toll, little is known about the environmental challenges the Palestinian territory is facing. Challenges which threaten to morph the situation into an even deeper crisis.
As concerns for Palestinian civilians rise, their suffering is being compounded by a growing climate catastrophe. According to the UN, the region is already among the most climate vulnerable on the planet. Part of the Mediterranean climactic zone, threatened by desertification and declining rain, and plagued by water scarcity. While the world's average temperature has increased by 1.1 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, average temperatures in this zone have risen by 1.5 degrees and are predicted to rise another 3.5 degrees by the end of the century. The increase threatens to make the situation worse in the occupied West Bank and Gaza, where there is already a shortage of water. GlobalWaters.org, a U.S. agency portal that reports on global water security, sanitation, and hygiene, says that there's not enough water to meet Palestinians' needs. As Israel controls access to the precious resource, only around 88% of the Palestinian population has basic access to water, and 31% has access to sanitation. The water system in the occupied West Bank sees frequent failures, leaving only a third of the Palestinian population connected to a sewage network, and treats 5 to 10% of the wastewater. In Gaza, 95% of the water from the main aquifer does not meet the basic standard for human consumption. Degraded infrastructure that can't be repaired under blockade means that an estimated 90,000 cubic meters of raw sewage seeps into groundwater and flows into the Mediterranean Sea every day, intruding into the central aquifer and increasing the risk of waterborne disease outbreaks. Rising sea levels impact the same aquifer and water sources in the area and threaten to make the situation worse. The issue is neglected by Israeli politicians, and tackling the climate threat is impossible for Palestinians under the current circumstances. These problems, along with a dense population in the occupied Palestine territories, high poverty level, and food insecurity only increase the risk of natural disaster and human suffering in a region already prone to earthquakes, floods, droughts, and landslides. Sarah Balter, Just 2 Degrees.
Somaliland is an autonomous region in the Horn of Africa that has experienced 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons. The crisis has meant severe shortages of food and water, and during such emergencies, schools act as sanctuaries for children. But with the lack of basic necessities, many began dropping out. That is, until the Save the Children Foundation intervened.
Hamda sips her porridge, prepared for her by organizers of the Global Partnership for Education. The 13-year-old student attends Bolded Primary, one of the 300 schools receiving daily lunch meals from the program. Hamda may appear happy here, but there's an acute food and water crisis in her community. She's forced to regularly travel long distances to fetch water. And she's not alone. More than 800,000 people in Somaliland are grappling with resource scarcity, forcing some to abandon their homes and travel in search of food and water. Somaliland, a breakaway region, is situated on the southern coast of the Gulf of Aden and is bordered by Djibouti to the northwest, Ethiopia to the south and west, and Somalia to the east. Most of Somaliland's 4.5 million people live in poverty, and 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons have had a far-reaching impact. Not least has been the forced closure of 74 schools, affecting almost 6,000 school children. Schools are sanctuaries for children, but the lack of basic food and clean drinking water means many students have stopped attending.
abaar adag baa ku dhacday deegaanka abaar saameyn badan kaga tagtay ayaa ku dhacday marka abaartaasi waxay maaragtay hoos u dhigtay waxbarashadii ardayda.
But there is a glimmer of hope. With a $5 million grant from the Global Partnership for Education implemented by Save the Children Foundation, people are building resilience.
Yeah, in the context of Somalia and Somaliland, actually school feeding program is very, very important because of recently, you know, the climate change, the impact of climate change in terms of, you know, droughts and famine has been very severe in the East Africa region, and particularly in Somalia and Somaliland. In many aspects, actually, school feeding programs is one of the key strategies and interventions that we use to promote access to equitable, quality education for all.
The aid program is supporting nearly 50,000 children across 300 primary schools in 6 primary regions of Somaliland. During emergencies, schools can offer a base for an integrated response for children, offering those in need education, nutrition, safe water, and sanitation. The program has funded water, sanitation, and hygiene interventions and distributes portable water to 179 schools. It also rehabilitated water storage facilities, including roof catchment harvesting, which is the practice of collecting, diverting, and storing water from rain for later reuse in 60 schools. The principal of Hamda's school says school feeding initiatives help to avoid disruptions to children's education.
waxaa ka mid ah ardayda oo marka qaarkood yimaada marka qaarkood isku jooga waxa dhacday oo kale ardaydu marka ay iskuulka joogaan ay wax dhiganayaan inay maaragtay ay joogi kari waayaan oo ay waqtigii loogu talagalay wax ku bartaan ay ku barin kari waayaan macallinkuna uu taa fahmo uu iska sii daayo si ay xafadooda ay cunto ugu raadsadaan.
And these interventions provide relief for families who would otherwise have to provide lunch for their children.
carruurta iskuulka loogu sameeyaa aad bay carruurta muhiim ugu tahay waxa tarna ugu yeelatay markii hore aan oolin raashinkaas iskuulka oolin waxa ahayd inaanu anagu qasabda ugu sameeyno nus saace marka qaarkood aan lahayn in loo raadiyo dilo qasab loogu soo dadaal loo galo laakiin markii nus saace loo sameeyay carruurtu way ku fiicnaatay way ku wanaagsan tahay waxaanu doonaynaa in loo sii wado.
Simultaneously ensuring children in drought-affected areas remain in school and funding projects that offer them education, nutrition, safe water, and sanitation. Mikhail Malik, just 2 degrees.
Well, after months without rain, the Amazon River has fallen to its lowest level in over 100 years. Take a look at these pictures. Boats left stranded in water, which dropped by about 4 meters since a year ago. High temperatures are also suspected of killing more than 100 endangered river dolphins. The country's science ministry blames the situation on this year's El Niño climate phenomenon, which is driving extreme weather patterns around the world. The Brazilian government says it expects the drought will last until at least December. Santa Helena do Inglês is one of the communities affected by the drought. Food packages have been delivered there by the Sustainable Amazonia Foundation and the Amazon Climate Alliance. The organizations are mapping the areas in need and mobilizing donations, and not just food, but also drinking water, medicines, and other essential items. 60 of the 62 cities in northern Amazonas state have declared a state of emergency. Authorities say October is a challenging month.
É desafiador para as comunidades, porque aquilo que as comunidades não produzem, que é alimento, é o que mais nesse momento é necessário. Assim como a questão de medicamentos, né? A gente acabou de ouvir das pessoas da comunidade, o receio de ficar doente, o receio de precisar de um atendimento e ter dificuldade de sair.
The British environmental group Fossil Fuel London organized a 3-day protest in mid-October outside the Intercontinental Hotel, while representatives of some of the world's biggest climate-polluting companies met for the Energy Intelligence Forum inside. The CEOs of companies like the Kuwait Petroleum Company, Saudi Aramco, Repsol, Total Energies, and Shell were all there. Well, hundreds of people joined the rally including activists from France, Netherlands, Germany and Norway. Fossil Free London organizer Nuri Kosa talks about the effects of floods and wildfires this year. He says the fossil fuel industry has, quote, actively distracted and delayed and, quote, created loopholes to allow their business to go on at the expense of the planet. Also at the protest was Greta Thunberg, who had this to say before she was arrested and taken away.
Behind these closed doors at the Oil and Money Conference, spineless politicians are making deals and compromises with lobbyists from destructive industries, the fossil fuel industry. People all over the world are suffering and dying from the consequences of the climate crisis caused by these industries who we allow to meet with our politicians and have privileged access to. It has been clear for decades that the fossil fuel industries were well aware of the consequences of their business models. And yet they have done nothing. The opposite. They have actively delayed, distracted, and denied the causes of the climate crisis.
These companies are making decisions to increase oil and extraction, and we are here to oppose that.
And it's really crazy that there's still happening conferences like this where they talk about profit and literally ignoring the climate crisis and trying to ignore the climate crisis and not taking action.
Hi Henry, it's good seeing you. Talk about what's happening where you are.
So we're here at Fossil Free London's second day of protesting the International Energy Intelligence Forum, and this was previously called the Oil and Money Conference. So in this building, we've got chief executives of the fossil fuel industry meeting with banks and politicians to discuss how to further establish and entrench fossil fuels. And we're outside protesting to tell them that this cannot go on and that we do not want it to continue. We know that to stay within a safe and livable future, we can't have any new investment in fossil fuels. That's been said by the IPCC, that's been said by the International Energy Agency. And we know that actually, if we massively invest in renewables and upscale at the speed and scale required, that this can be done without the kind of carbon emissions of the fossil fuels.
You've got some pretty big names behind you in the building from some of the most powerful companies in the world. I saw some footage of some of them arriving this morning, seemingly nonchalant, that there were people shouting, "Shame on you," that you were in this conference and contributing to so many greenhouse gases. What are you hoping to achieve there?
Well, as you said, this conference has got the chief executives of Shell, Saudi Aramco and Equinor. And Equinor are actually speaking today. They have the chief executive from that company. They are the Norwegian state-backed oil and gas company behind the Rosebank oil field, which has just been approved here in the UK. This is an absolute carbon bomb, which will have the oil and gas emissions of the 28 lowest income countries, producing hundreds of millions of barrels of oil. And we're here to say that this cannot go on, that we do not want any further fossil fuels, and to tell them we want oily money out of our politics and society.
I understand a few people were arrested on the first or second, on the first day of the protest. What happened and under what grounds were they arrested?
Yeah, so a number of activists were arrested yesterday. Predominantly, they were arrested for a Section 14 offence, which was put in place by the police. Now, obviously, we know that we have a right to protest, that's our own, but the laws in this country have been further expanded to shut down peaceful protests. As you can see, though, it's not going to stop us coming out, and it's not going to stop us from saying that we can't have this go on.
Well, agriculture is number 2 on the list of the top causes of global warming. The UN reports our food systems produce a third of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. The 2023 UN Food and Agriculture Organization's Science and Innovation Forum in Rome ended on October 20th. The event provided a place for cross-cultural and cross-sector conversations about using science, technology, and innovation to improve agriculture, food systems, and mitigate their effect on the planet.
Science, technology, and innovation can help us really switch from the bad boy to the saver. Because agriculture right now, yes, it does emit 30% of the greenhouse gas, but it's the only sector that also sequesters, which we haven't yet grasped our head how much is sequestering. But what we know is that if we transform towards better approaches, we can increase our sequestration capacity, because when you think about carbon, the sequestration happens only in soil, in plant and oceans. From technology innovation to financial innovation to institutional innovation to policy innovation, so the whole spectrum of innovation. And we hope really that the debate between the different stakeholders will bring to bear what do we know now, what could we scale up now, and where should we invest in the future to have better science and evidence base for policy making and for the transformation of agri-food system. We have a session dedicated to understand better the indigenous knowledge, the local knowledge, the small-scale producer knowledge, and we have a session called Two-Eyed Seeing to really dive into this kind of knowledges and discuss how could we bring it to be known, to be respected, and to be used as a peer-to-peer learning across the globe.
And some more cows for you. New Zealand's economy relies heavily on animal agriculture. There are, after all, about 10 million cows and some 25 million sheep roaming the country's pastures. But those animals are a burden on the environment. Their belches and farts contain methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, and one that's responsible for about 30% of the global rise in temperatures. So, to address this, New Zealand says it will begin taxing farmers for the livestock's gases. The initiative was announced last year, but the topic was a divisive issue in the lead-up to the general election in mid-October.
I think farmers generally feel like they've been doing the right thing by the environment. And that's not to say we're not improving, like we've got lots to do. It's a really tricky solution to solve. This is, a biological system, and trying to find a solution when there's no answers at the moment. What does the future hold? Do we want our kids? Is there a viable business, a viable, family environment for our kids coming through? It will definitely impact on how agricultural or rural communities vote this election particularly.
It's important for New Zealand to lower our greenhouse gas emissions, including from agriculture, just as it is for every other country in the world. There is some dispute around how to price agricultural emissions. It is important for New Zealand to lead the way on this because, we are one of the world's leading agricultural countries, and agricultural emissions make up half of the total pollution that we put into the atmosphere every year. New Zealand's pathway to lower emissions is a mix both of new technologies and in changes in on-farm practice.
Well, the stratosphere is the second highest level of our planet's atmosphere, and it's already changing because of the environmental emergency. Since the advent of the space age, scientists have been aware that space debris has potential implications for the climate, the ozone and atmospheric layer. We've known for decades that when launching rockets into space, some of the materials burn up in the atmosphere and leave remnants behind.
Stratosphere is important to study because it has the ozone layer in it, which protects humans from ultraviolet radiation. So as our climate changes, we're very interested in changes that could propagate into the stratosphere, change that ozone layer, and have impacts on humans and other life forms on the surface of the planet. Stratospheric research is not easy because it's such a high layer of the atmosphere, so we have to use almost unique airplanes that belong to NASA. So examples of those are NASA's WB-57 and NASA's ER-2 aircraft, which allow us to bring a substantial number of payload instruments into the stratosphere. One of the things that we did on this project was to use 2 different aircraft in multiple locations. These included over the central US, over Alaska, as well as over the Southwest Pacific. We've known for a number of decades since we started launching rockets into space that some of that material would burn up in the atmosphere as it re-entered. but we hadn't really seen that signal yet. It was dwarfed by the natural meteor flux that came into the atmosphere. But we started to see products that are from the burn up of launch vehicles and satellites entering the atmosphere. And so this was a new result, the mixing of these two types of components, meteoritic material, which is natural, and launch vehicle and satellite remnants, which are man-made. What's new about this is the material that's coming in from spacecraft, from launch vehicles as they re-enter the atmosphere and mix with that natural material. So now we're seeing that these small metallic particles in the stratosphere are not purely from natural sources, they have a human component as well. This is a global issue in that this material enters the upper atmosphere, and as it filters down through the layers of the atmosphere and ultimately into the stratosphere, it mixes across the surface of the planet, changing the particulate matter in our stratosphere. And that means that the chemistry of the stratosphere is going to change. That means that things like our ozone layer could be perturbed by these changes, as well as clouds that form in our stratosphere could also be changed by this material.
Scientists studying the rare Antarctic fruit seal have made a worrying discovery that there are significantly fewer of them on the South Georgia island, which is just north of Antarctica, and dwindling food supplies are threatening to kill off the species.
The main food supply for the Antarctic fur seals, which is the Antarctic krill, which is a small shrimp-like organism and is the most abundant of its kind in the planet, it has started to be less predictable for the seals, and the seals, especially when they breed, heavily rely on it to survive and also to nurse their pups. And so their life cycle is completely altered and affected by the lack of this organism. Let's say it's a critical staple, is 80% of what they eat. So there's no krill. The fur seals at South Georgia don't do so well because basically there's not an alternative food source. We have now evidence that the episodes of lack of food are more frequent. For instance, in the last 5 years, there's been 4 bad years of no krill or very little krill. And we have observed within one generation of seals, the generation for a fur seal is about 9 to 11 years, how the population has declined by 40%. So that's really dramatic. So year on year, we find that the seals have been struggling to find the food. And because it's the main source of food, it has catastrophic consequences for the species, because in a year where there is no krill, so the female fur seals cannot produce pups properly, or their pups starve because they don't have enough food. And the older individuals die.
It is autumn in the northern hemisphere. Leaves are turning yellow and brown and dying. You may be used to cleaning those leaves right up, but botanists recommend we leave fallen leaves on the ground, as they could become a wildlife habitat for small creatures as they decompose. And that's how we end the program. But before we go, take a look at this stunning scenery. The Moulière Massif in Montargis, France, stretches for thousands upon thousands of hectares The effects of the climate crisis, though, can sometimes be quite subtle here, but the government is hoping to make the region more resistant to climate shocks by planting a variety of trees. They say the mixed plots will help to improve the soil and local ecosystems.